students of class 10, welcome back to the online classes now. So today we will do supplementary reader from first flight. We have finished up to lesson 6. Now we will do footprints without feet, supplementary reader, lesson 1, A Triumph of Surgery. It is written by James Harriot. So far in our previous class we have done from first flight. We have done some poems and up to lesson 6. Lesson 6, it has got 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. We have finished. The 100 dresses, till there we have finished, and one more poem, Amanda. Till there we have done. So we'll put a pause over there and we'll start with supplementary reader, The Footprints Without Feet. The name of the supplementary reader is Footprints Without Feet, and the chapter 1 is A Triumph of Surgery. It's written by James Harriot. Now this is just an introduction about the theme of the story, what it is all about. Then from next class we will continue our lesson from paragraph wise. So now here the theme or what the story is all about. There are altogether 8 points. Number 1, the story which we are going to study, A Triumph of Surgery, reveals or revolves around an ill dog named Tricky. The story is about an ill dog, and the name of the dog is Tricky, and his mistress, and the owner of the dog, mistress, Mrs. Pumphrey. Pumphrey is the owner of the dog. Now here, number 2, Mrs. Pumphrey gave her malt, not her, it's a female dog. The dog was a female. Tricky and her mistress. Tricky and her mistress, Mrs. Pumphrey. Mrs. Pumphrey gave her, or means the dog, malt. Malt means liquid food, nutritive liquid food. Cod liver oil. Cod liver oil means fish oil, and bowl of Horlicks, and all kinds of good food. Since Mrs. Pumphrey was a millionaire, she had no children, and she had one pet dog named Tricky, and she used to feed all kinds of good stuff. So that's why the dog Tricky had grown very fat. The dog Tricky had grown very, very fat and had no energy. Since it had grown so fat, it had no energy. It stopped eating. It had red eyes, and the eyes were rheumy. Rheumy means the tears were flowing. The doctor, now here comes the scene, the doctor. The doctor, Harriot, the writer, advised Mrs. Pumphrey to cut down on sweet things and cakes. She called the doctor, and the doctor advised Mrs. Pumphrey to cut down on sweet things, especially cakes, malts, Horlicks, and so on, eggs. So cut down on sweet things and cakes. But Tricky left eating and kept vomiting. Since it had grown very, very fat, it stopped eating and it kept on vomiting. That's why Mrs. Pumphrey was much worried about Tricky. But the doctor advised her to cut down on sweet things. He was to be hospitalized. Ultimately, the doctor advised Mrs. Pumphrey that Tricky must be hospitalized. Otherwise, you will lose the dog. So, Mrs. Pumphrey was very upset. She cried because that was the only pet she had since she had no children. In the hospital, what happens? In the hospital, the doctor, Harriet, the doctor gave Tricky nothing for 1 or 2 days, except water for few days. For 2 days, the doctor did not give anything to eat, just water. The doctor said, you have eaten too much. Because of your greed for food, you are sick. You will not get anything to eat. Just take water. For 2 days, Harriet, the doctor gave him water only. On the third day, because the dog must be feeling hungry, on the third day there was sign of improvement. He started moving. He started looking for food. There was a sign of improvement. After that, it started taking food properly. As the days passed, the dog started eating food and started playing around with other dogs. There were other dogs in the clinic, in the hospital also. And the Tricky played with other dogs. And played with other dogs and recovered completely after a fortnight, after 2 weeks. Tricky was completely recovered. It had grown thin also. Its body had muscles now. It could run very fast. Before, when it was brought in the hospital, it was so dull, it was so lazy, it could not move its body. The belly touched the ground, so fat it had grown. It just looked like a sausage, a lump of flesh. But now its muscles had grown and it could run very fast. The Tricky was completely recovered. When Mrs. Pumphrey came to collect the dog, after a fortnight, after 10-15 days, when Mrs. Pumphrey came to collect the dog in the hospital, she cried with joy. She was so happy, she cried. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She was very happy, so happy that she cried with joy. She called this magical recovery a triumph of surgery. So she said, this is a triumph of surgery. Triumph means victory. This is a triumph of surgery. My dog has grown very smart. It can run fast. It's a complete recovery. And she took the dog in a big, long, gleaming car. And maybe again she will keep on feeding him with good stuff, overfeeding. The dog was eating so much that it stopped eating. And Mrs. Pumphrey thought that the dog must be getting less food. There is no energy. I must give the dog more food. She used to overfeed him. That's why. Again she must. Again the dog might have come again in the hospital, because after recovering, she will take the dog and she will feed again, overfeeding, and again the same cycle goes on. Again the dog will be hospitalized again. So in this way. So now here, this is what's all about the story. Now in our next class we will continue paragraph wise, properly in detail. So that's all. This is all in short, in a nutshell. So we'll do properly, thoroughly, so that you can understand everything very clearly. So that's all for today. So this is just in general. So we'll meet in the next class and continue regularly, paragraph wise, in detail. That's all for today. Thank you very much for watching the video.